Hey guys, I'm out on the range today to do a little demonstration to show how important it is to know the velocity of your bullets when they're impacting your steel targets, and just basically how that relationship with distance works. When you're shooting steel targets, this target down here is one of my new SR500 Plus targets. You still want, for the longevity of your target, you want velocity to be at a maximum of 3,200 feet per second. Ideally keeping it down below 3,000 feet per second. But I've got my 22-250 here. I've got some Hornady Super Performance varmint rounds. The box states that they're 4,000 feet per second at the muzzle. With my 22-inch rifle here, I measured it at like 38.87, I think it was. I'm going to shoot this target, this little 6-inch target here at 100 yards. I've got my Garmin Zero down range, and it's measuring just in front of the target about 10 yards. You have to have it set back a bit. I learned that lesson the hard way yesterday. So that's going to be measuring velocity just before the bullet impacts the target, and then we're going to see what the velocity is at different ranges. And then afterwards, I'll take the plate to the shop and we'll take a look at it with a dial indicator and see just how deep each of the pits are. So let's check this out. This one's the 100-yard shot. All right, easy enough. Let's go back to 200. All right, I misspoke there. 150. We're at 150 right now. There we go. Now we'll go back to 200. All right, final shot at 200. There we go. All right, I'm gonna go grab the target. We'll reconvene this video at the shop where I'm gonna measure the pits and review the video and see exactly what the velocities were. All right, I'm back in the shop, going to show you the setup here. We're gonna test these and show you the effect on pitting that velocity has. So first off, you can see how this plate rocks. That's because that 100-yard impact actually caused deformation on the back side of the plate. So if you've got that, you're definitely going way too fast. If the massive pit on the front wasn't obvious, when you start to see that deflection on the back, that's a hair's breadth away from knocking out a slug. It'll knock out a slug around there, that where that's dimpling, it'll fracture around that, and that'll pop out the back. Not necessarily the first time you hit it. I have seen targets where it's taken time and over impacts, it's already a weak point and that slug will eventually work its way out. Sometimes all it takes is one shot and it'll knock it out. So if you have a hole in the target, you're going way, way too fast. So this is, in order to get around that, I'm going to put it up on these plates, these 1/4-inch thick plates, so we won't have that rocking on there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero on just on the perimeter of each hole outside the perimeter, and then we'll test the depth at the deepest spot I can find. So first up, we've got 100 yards right here is this guy. I'm going to zero that kind of down in the deepest part there, it looks like. All right, so about 77 thousandths. So pretty nasty little pit there, 77 thousandths. All right, so that was the first one at 100 yards. The bullet was going 3,520 feet per second, and that resulted in a 0.077 inch deep crater on the target. So this next one, we'll go over here, we'll test 30, we'll test this one at 150 yards, and that one was going 3,340 feet per second. So we're looking at 0.042 inches. So 150 yards, 3,340 feet per second, 0.042 inches deep. Now we're going to go to 200 yards, and there's where we got down below the maximum feet per second limit of 3,200 feet per second. We were at 3,119, so 3,119. Now you want to make sure that it's below 3,200 feet per second for sure. Ideally below 3,000 feet per second, but were this my target, I would be perfectly all right with this level of performance. So we're going to zero here. Takes a little bit of a pit out, but if you want to enjoy your target at a specific range or you have limitations, there's just only so much you can do, but I would consider this acceptable. We're talking 0.024. And with this one, you can definitely see, let's see if I can get this up here for the camera to show. So these two pits at 100 and 150, they were nasty pits. You can see how there's no deflection of lead around the perimeter of it, because all of the bullet went in, you know, cratered so deep that when it came out, it was coming back at such an angle that it didn't take any of the paint off around it. In contrast, this one over here on the edge, this one is at 200 yards, and there's a little bit of a pit right there. That's where I measured that depth at, but most of it actually doesn't have any cratering at all. So it's much more localized, and you can see the spread on the lead, and you can actually see this is kind of neat. You can see how it's spread out here, where most of that doesn't have a pit at all, and the lead was able to go out and it took paint off. That's how shallow that angle is coming off of that steel. So it's more or less straight up and down when you're at the proper distance, because you can see where it lacks right here, where there isn't the paint taken off. That's right where a little crater, a little divot formed, and it caused the lead to come off at a more steep angle, so it didn't take that paint. Now, something that I didn't show on camera, I went back the edge of where I could shoot in my yard at, it was 250 yards. And this one, re-zero that there. And 3/4 thousandths is all. So that one pretty much didn't crater at all. And you can see how you've got this beautiful flower there, a freedom flower we'll call it, where the lead splattered all the way off at a really shallow angle. So you didn't have any crater forming there. So that's what you're looking for when you're shooting your steel targets. If you shoot one, you got them freshly painted, and you shoot it and you don't see any flowering around the bullet impact at all, you know you've made a crater and you're too close. So obviously you're better off if you can start out further and work your way in gradually and see what you're doing. I wouldn't expect you to take your chronograph and set it down range and test exactly what you're going, what velocities you're seeing at the target. I just did this for a reference to kind of show you how the bullet slows down over range, and really how you got to be, particularly when you're shooting these fast calibers like this 22-250, you have to be mindful of its range, because 100 yards, you're just going to wreck your target. It doesn't matter how hard it is. You're going to put a hurting on it and cause significantly decreased life of your target. So certainly with 22-250, I would maintain 200 yards or further, but it's going to depend on your caliber, your conditions, all that stuff, what kind of gun you're shooting, what kind of barrel you've got, what kind of rounds you're shooting. So test it, your golden gun out for yourself, start out further, work your way in. That'll give you the best chance of success with your targets. So I have a lot of fun with them, and if you want to find some really cool targets, check out atlastargetworks.com.